Hey folks, Zach Osterman here, IU Insider, Indianapolis Star. This is your, day 2 Bahamas video diary. We've gotten done with all of both Indiana and Louisville pregame news conferences, things like that from Indiana's perspective. We talked to Mike Woodson, Trey Galloway, and Umar Ballo. Some really interesting bits and pieces, just kind of all over the place. Obviously, Ballo got some questions from Arizona writers about his transition to Indiana and how well he thinks he's sort of fitting in. Mike Woodson joked with one of the Arizona reporters. He said, "You're not here to take him back to Arizona, right?" Woodson gave some interesting updates. It sounds like Gabe Cupps could be closer to playing Wednesday, or at least at some point this week. He's back in practice. Woodson's not sure exactly what his workload might be from a game prep or a game standpoint yet. But Woodson said he has been practicing a little bit and just kind of made it sound like maybe Cupps might be ready for something, if not Wednesday, then at least at some point this week in the way of playing time. Ja'Kai Newton, it sounds like, number one, hasn't practiced. Number two, maybe is further away. Not sure if we'll see Newton out here. He's been dealing with a hamstring injury. It was also interesting to talk to Woodson, and I wrote something about this today. He has been slowly kind of building Trey Galloway back up. Galloway, the first game in these first four, that Galloway didn't play more minutes than he did the previous game, was the UNC Greensboro game. He only played 15 minutes in that game after I think the first three games with 17, 18, 22 minutes. You got the sense that maybe Galloway, his playing time was affected more just by the circumstances of the game against Greensboro and how well in particular Miles Rice was playing, rather than maybe Woodson protecting him. But Woodson kind of said, 3 games in 3 days here. I'm gonna listen to the player. I'm gonna give him some, I'm gonna give him kind of some input in how he feels and let him guide me a little bit. But he also said, I need Trey Galloway healthy all season. I don't just need him healthy for 3 games in Atlanta. So I wouldn't be shocked if we see maybe some limits here or there around Galloway's minutes, but we'll see. Interesting from Pat Kelsey's side too, just listening to him. We talked to Chucky Hepburn, who obviously Indiana fans will know well. Hepburn was at Wisconsin for the last 3 years. Now he is Louisville's starting point guard. It's interesting because he's both kind of the one player with experience against Indiana on Louisville's team. He's also the one player with experience in this event. He played here, I think, 2 years ago with Wisconsin. You get that a little bit as players move around. Obviously, Indiana has Anthony Leal and Trey Galloway, who know this event from Mike Woodson's first season. But Louisville kind of has leaned into Chucky Hepburn, and he talked about, telling his teammates, just keep shooting. You're going to have to figure out kind of it's dark behind the baskets, the way they light the Imperial Arena for these games. You just kind of have to keep shooting to find your rhythm, but it'll come. And he also talked about Indiana and knowing, Mike Woodson a little bit, knowing their personnel. Of course, Indiana's turned over a little bit offensive or personnel-wise as well. But, Hepburn kind of joked that that he kind of owes one to Indiana because IU beat Wisconsin in Hepburn's last game against IU while he was with the Badgers. But you could tell, a lot of respect from Pat Kelsey. Forgive me, it's been kind of a quick-moving morning from Pat Kelsey's perspective for Indiana, for Mike Woodson, for what the Hoosiers are able to do offensively. He said he thinks that Indiana's got as many as 4 future NBA players. Talked about how many different ways they can score, how advanced kind of they are in terms of the individual skills that you've got to defend from player to player. And then from Mike Woodson's perspective, he talked about what you'd expect with Louisville. They run, they shoot a ton of threes. He said that it's, I think he called it the long ball, that they shoot it, about as consistently as anyone in the country, and they do. They're top 5 in the country in 3-point attempts as a percentage of overall field goal attempts. And he kind of expects bigs that are going to force Indiana to move around a little bit. Louisville's bigs can play outside in some. They can space the floor a little bit better than your average. I think this will be an interesting game to test kind of how Indiana manages some of its rotations. One reporter asked Woodson about his kind of 2 big lineups, which obviously he still starts with those. It's worth saying he doesn't necessarily he's not necessarily married to them. Indiana's been playing smaller lineups in different combinations a lot more this year. But the flip side is, Louisville's a very efficient 2-point shooting team. They just don't take a lot of them. Would you rather have an Umar Ballo in the game to discourage Louisville going to the rim? Or are you concerned about maybe getting moved around a little bit too much, a little bit more in terms of maybe facing a stretch big, someone like Keyshawn Pryor, who is going to move around a little bit more, isn't just going to want to find all of his offense 8 feet and in. It's an interesting matchup of styles. Louisville plays smaller, faster, force a lot of turnovers, kind of frenetic, not the most efficient team in the world offensively. Indiana plays plenty fast, needs to limit turnovers, needs to limit sort of the impact of the three-point line, but is obviously going to be able to leverage a size advantage, probably an experience advantage, and possibly a depth advantage as well, just as deep as we know Indiana goes from a playmaking perspective. So noon Wednesday, we'll leave it there, but noon Wednesday, Indiana Louisville in the opening round of the Battle for Atlantis. IndyStar.com/sports. We've got a ton of coverage there with more to come. Go there to watch videos, read all about Indiana's trip out here to the Bahamas. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you soon.